Muhammad Ali Center Council of Students. These students that you see right here in front of you are going to be talking about what does it mean to carry on the dream of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., as well as carry on the legacy of Muhammad Ali. First though, I want to pass it off to our president and CEO, Mr. Devon Holt, to say a few words.
It's afternoon now. Good afternoon. And welcome to the Muhammad Ali Center. We are so thrilled to have you here on a really special occasion. Obviously, the Muhammad Ali Center is always ready, willing, and excited to welcome people in to learn more about the life and legacy of Muhammad Ali. But today, we get a chance to dovetail that with the life and legacy of Martin Luther King Jr. And it's no coincidence that this space is a place where we bring those two worlds together because although those two men in many cases moved and operated in different ways, they both had a very strong desire to make the world a better place and use their respective resources and influence to help make that happen. And so today, we will get an opportunity to hear from the future. Now, Muhammad was not just a boxer. He was a great humanitarian. He showed us what compassion looked like in a very real way. But in addition to all of that, if you were to talk to his wife, Lonnie, who's unfortunately not with us in the building today, she's a little under the weather, so you guys say a prayer for her. She's a little think she's got a little cold this morning. But Lonnie will tell you that in addition to all of those things that her husband was, he was also a man who loved himself very much. He did not lack for a sense of meaning and purpose and appreciation for the gift that he was to the world. Well, one of the things that I didn't learn until I became the CEO here at the Muhammad Ali Center was that there was a movie produced about Muhammad and his life, and there was some music written to support that movie. And that song that many of us have come to know, you might recall Whitney Houston singing the song, "Greatest Love of All." That song was written for Muhammad. But I think it's apropos today that the lyrics to that song lead us into a panel discussion with our young people, because the song starts with these words: "I believe the children are our future. Teach them well and let them lead the way. Show them all the beauty they possess inside." And so today we pause to do just that, to let the young people lead the way. Because if there's ever a time where we needed their energy, their excitement, and their innovative ideas and approaches to making this world a better place, it's now. And so today we pause to listen to them, hear from them, figure out what we might be able to do to implement their work into our daily lives, use what they share with us today to influence how we operate, and ultimately help prepare our places as areas where they might eventually become leaders themselves. So thank you guys for being here. Thank you guys for preparing to share with us. Don't they look great? Give them a round of applause. I'm excited to hear from them, and so I'm going to shut up, get out of the way, and let Garrett transition us into the...
Awesome. Thank you very much. So, for those of you, just a little background. The Muhammad Ali Center Council of Students is a youth program that we run at the Muhammad Ali Center. Our students meet 2 times a month and learn how to become leaders and advocates in their community. And so we have 4 of those students here with us. Really quick, I'm just going to have them each kind of go down the line, give us their name, and tell us where they go to school and what dreams they have for when they're older.
Hello everybody, thank you for coming. My name is Liam O'Connor. I go to Trinity High School, and my dream for when I get older, I I'm really passionate about human rights, so I'm thinking about maybe becoming a human rights lawyer. So, yeah.
My name is Raya Abdullah. I go to Kentucky Country Day, and my dream for when I get older is to hopefully work at a domestic abuse clinic as a doctor.
My name's Layla Hassan. I go to DuPont Manual, and I hope to be a lawyer or work in international affairs.
My name is Kruthi Mankamore. I'm currently a senior at DuPont Manual, and I hope to become a bioengineer in the future.
Thank you all. So I'm going to get right into the questions. First one, could each of you describe what it means to be a part of the Muhammad Ali Center Council of Students? And maybe give us a couple of great memories or skills you've learned along the way.
Yeah, so I would say MACCS, even though we all come from very diverse backgrounds in different areas of life, I would really say we're all like one big family. I joined just last year, so I'm relatively new because you can join as early as a freshman. I joined my junior year, but I would really say the community I found and the friendships I've made really what has kept me coming back. So, and then things we do, we go to Frankfurt to lobby our local representatives and congressmen. We went to DC this last past year for a similar thing. We do a lot of service. We do stuff like this, advocating for the community. So yeah, I would say it's really just a great opportunity if you're passionate about social justice and change.
So I joined the Muhammad Ali Council of Students last year as a freshman. And at my school, they like to censor politics because they don't want any conflict between students with different political opinions. So what I get from the Muhammad Ali Center is education, because it is, after all, a social justice program. And I learned a lot about stuff that I was very, very ignorant to before that. And obviously the community. I've met some of my closest friends at the center.
I also joined last year as a freshman. It was my first year. And my favorite thing about MACCS is just the fact that you learn to really use the opportunities you're given to help others, which I never thought was capable. I also never thought you could not be too young to help others. I always thought you have to be older, you have to be powerful, but you can really use your voice to help anyone, and that's my favorite thing about MACCS.
So I joined MACCS this year as a senior. This is my first year, and I think MACCS has given me a sense of community that you don't really get outside of MACCS. For me, I go to DuPont Manual, and so we get a lot of liberal opinions there, and not necessarily a bad thing, but it just kind of closes you up to what the rest of the world is like. And so to be part of a community that gets a lot of different opinions, whether they be liberal, conservative, different political opinions, I've gotten the opportunity to hear a lot of what I wouldn't get the chance to hear at school.
Awesome, thank you. My next question. So for those of you that don't know, Muhammad Ali and Dr. King actually met in Louisville once. In 1967, there was a protest because of Louisville's unfair housing practices at the time. And actually, Dr. Martin Luther King and Muhammad Ali organized a protest during the Kentucky Derby to showcase the injustices of the housing policies in Louisville at the time. If they were here today, what do you think, what kind of protest do you envision them putting together?
Me personally, I would say it's probably about equity and education. Louisville is one of the most segregated school districts in the country. I mean, some of the history behind that, redlining, things like that. We don't have to get too into that because I don't want to spend an hour and a half. But I would say that's what they'd be protesting for. I mean, me personally, I'm very fortunate to go to Trinity. It's nothing like that, but I do go to a very segregated school. Only about 12% of our student population is Black. So I would say being a part of a program like this, it really opens you up to new perspectives and new opportunities. So yeah, I would say that's probably what they'd be fighting for.
I think they'd be fighting for the freedom of the Palestinians, considering that Muhammad Ali himself was a Muslim, and he wouldn't stand for the fact that people are making it a religious conflict when it really isn't. And I think they would be fighting for the voices of the Palestinians less than like the actual freedom of them, because there's been a lot of censorship And I think Muhammad Ali and Martin Luther King are very against censorship. So I think they would be fighting more for the ability for expression.
I agree with Liam, but I also think they would still be arguing about our housing crises. A lot of gentrification is still happening, which is leading to a lot of people becoming homeless and a lot of housing insecurities, which is a really big issue in our state with, in Louisville, I guess just Louisville. And it honestly really hurts minorities the most, and seeing as they're both minorities, I'm sure they would bring it up.
I strongly agree with Layla, but I just want to bring into question the, I guess, mindsets that go behind the housing crisis. Recently, I discovered that the West End and the East End of Louisville are obviously very segregated in terms of housing, but apparently the East End's housing tend to be 3 times as costlier as the West End's. And apparently this is because of no apparent reason. And so I think it's important to kind of look at what the mindset behind these costly prices are in the West End especially, and then also kind of think about what that says about us as a community in Louisville. And we talk about change, we talk about desegregating Louisville and the schooling systems and the housing crisis, yet I don't think we've changed that internally. And so I think they'd be fighting for everybody to make that change.
Thanks, y'all. You're killing it. So for those of you, we have been playing Martin Luther King Jr.'s famous I Have a Dream speech up here in the auditorium. And if you haven't gotten a chance to see it, stick after the panel. We'll show it again. But one thing that I really want to highlight, and this leads into my question, is that it wasn't just a passive thing, right? It was a call to action. It was a call for the people in the audience, people across the United States to, do the work, right? So as we continue the dream of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., what actions do you think young people in particular can take to combat inequality and inequity?
For me personally, I would say that just being a part of a group like this is massive, especially as youth, because being a part of a group like this, it really allows you to get your voice out there to the people that have the power. Because if I wasn't a part of this group and I wanted to, enact some kind of change in my community, I basically have no way of doing it. But the Muhammad Ali Center provides you with a platform to do that. And I would say another thing is just trying to get out there and get people on your side. Like if you're not actively out there working with people or communicating, nothing's ever going to happen. So word of mouth is massive. Another thing I would say is I'm also part of the Louisville Metro Youth Cabinet, so I work directly with our elected representatives here and our Metro Cabinet members. So I would say just being a part of something like that, actively working with our local government is massive. So.
I think the first thing that the youth has to do is go out and educate themselves, because before I joined MACCS, everyone around me was ignorant to what's going on in the world, because frankly, it doesn't, at least at my school, it doesn't really affect them. So they don't care, but the youth needs to go out and they need to learn what's going on in the world before they make action. And I think we forget a lot that MLK and Muhammad Ali didn't have something that we have today, which is the internet. They didn't have social media. And once you learn yourself, I think if you go on social media, you can teach others just as easily. So.
I agree with Raya. I think the easiest way to live is in a state of ignorance, but it's also not the best way to live. I think that if you want to do something, you have to take action. And I also agree with Liam. I was not ignorant, but less educated than I am right now. And if you join groups such as MACCS, or I'm also a part of Louisville Girls Leadership, which I learned a lot about, like just places in our city that if you don't live there, you would have never heard about. And I think that that's the biggest part, is that you can take action, but you also have to use your words. And those are the two things that'll help our city.
I strongly believe that a lot of our youth don't recognize that they have the power to make change, and sitting at where we are with a primarily conservative Supreme Court, and this likely won't change for the next couple of election cycles, it's vital to recognize that we still do have power to do something in our world. And so sitting with powerful students like Liam, like Raya, like Layla, and all of the MACCS that realize that we do have power in the world. It's super important to spread this message to the rest of our youth because power comes in numbers, and if it's just the four of us trying to say that we can do something, we're not going to be able to do anything. So if the rest of our youth recognize this, I strongly believe that change will come.
So I'm going to flip it around a little bit. We have a room with a lot of adults here. What do you think older generations need to know from youth activists like yourself? What do they need to know how to support you best? How to best support your activism and your dreams?
I would say, again, kind of what they were saying, education especially. I would say the divide between our youth and our older generations is greater than ever, especially with the internet. A lot of the older generation doesn't understand the massive impact that social media has in our world today. So I would say just them trying to educate themselves around, especially social media and the problems that the youth feel like are the most pressing issues today. Also, coming to rooms like this, I mean, you guys have all come out here to show support to us and show support to the community. So you're taking that first step, but I would just say keep doing what you're doing, educate yourself, get out there, support us, join us in our events, our community fundraisers, things like that. So yeah.
I think that there's two things that the older generation can do. The first thing is to listen to the youth. I feel like a lot of older people just believe that we're immature and we don't know what we're talking about because we don't go through the same experiences that, or haven't had as much experience as older people do have. I think the second thing is mentorship because I can't claim that I know everything and I know I can learn a lot from other people. So people with more experience can definitely teach me a lot. So I think listening and mentorship is the two main things.
Mine is not underestimating the youth. I think a lot of people in our society think that age is a sign of intelligence, but it's not. There's plenty of older people who aren't amazing, and there's plenty of young people who are pretty amazing. And I just think that in our society, if we listen to the youth more, we could avoid a lot more problems that we deal with. And so yeah, just underestimating.
Amen.
I think it's really important for older generations to think about the issues that we're fighting for as a youth and realize that these issues are constantly changing. The issues that you all have fought for in your younger times are likely not the ones that we're fighting for. For me, at the forefront of my problems include rights for the LGBTQ plus community. And regardless of how you felt about that in the past, obviously that's not been at the top of everybody's agenda throughout history. And so I think recognizing that the issues that we talk about now are important, and even if you don't agree with what we're fighting for, it's important to still empower these voices.
So my next question, obviously, our public schools are out today. A lot of other schools and institutions take today off to honor Martin Luther King Jr. What do you think Martin Luther King Jr. and Muhammad Ali would have to say about the way their legacies are taught in both our private and public school systems?
I think personally they'd be ashamed, especially at a private school. Basically, all we learn about in terms of Black history is slavery and the Civil Rights Movement. Nothing about Reconstruction, nothing about Harlem Renaissance, anything like that. Nothing about any of the big cultural movements that happened. Because, I mean, this is going to sound cringy, but Black history is American history. I mean, this country was built on the backs of slavery. So it's important to recognize where we come from as a society. So I would say they'd be ashamed because essentially everything Muhammad Ali and Martin Luther King fought for has just been whitewashed into oblivion. Essentially all you learn about MLK is like, oh, he advocated for nonviolent resistance and now Black people are as equal as white people. Well, that's just not true. One of the main things he really fought for was allowing the white moderate into his organizations and into his activism. I mean, the white moderate makes up most of the country, so if the white moderate's not on your side, nothing's ever going to happen. So I would say that's probably what they'd be thinking. They'd just be ashamed.
I totally agree with Liam. I also go to a private school, and we don't even learn about the civil rights movement. We just learn about slavery. So I think that definitely they would be ashamed in the education system and how they choose to educate their youth because it's kind of like a shadow history. America's ashamed of how they've treated minorities, and they try to suppress that by not teaching it to their youth, and they're trying to forget that history. And I think Martin Luther King and Muhammad Ali would be ashamed in how they're remembered, because every time I see Muhammad Ali outside of the center, I see this amazing boxer. I don't see the human rights worker that he is. I don't see the Muslim that he is. I don't see all of the work that he put into most of his life. I don't see that at all because all of these huge corporations like Apple and Adidas and Nike just use his image for marketing, and they love to forget that he stood for so many humanitarian crises.
I go to DuPont Manual where a lot of the staff and students like to pride ourselves on being woke, but I really don't think that that's ever the case in a lot of our schools. For example, I learned what the children's march was last week, and not a single person in the entire class knew what it was. And if you don't know what it is, please go search it up. It is so interesting. And it's such a huge part of our history that no one knows about. And everyone in the class moved on with their day after that. We never brought it up after that. And I just think that in our schools, Black history is brought up when it needs to be talked about or when it's Black History Month, but it's never a day-to-day thing that we learn about. And I think that Muhammad Ali and Martin Luther King would be ashamed, frankly, that their images of their people are being not appreciated. Sorry.
With the controversy that College Board had last year about modifying their AP US history course, I'd like you all to think about how Black history is actively being erased. And this isn't just something that's present in Louisville. This is very, very, very prominent in Florida and Texas, especially with the history of Black history and slavery and Reconstruction completely being omitted from the curriculum. And that is an insane thing to do, especially because American history is Black history, and we wouldn't be here if it were not for the work that the Black community has put into building our country. On top of that, I just think that MLK Jr. and Muhammad Ali would be so angry about how they have been taught in the schooling systems, primarily because we talk about these voices as separate from one another. For me, last year I took AP US History, and we learned about Malcolm X and MLK Jr. in tandem to one another, and we talked about their differing ideologies. And I just thought that this was so weird because they were fighting for the same purpose, yet we always think about these two different ideologies and whose side you would have been on what they did for their own communities. But the reality is that MLK, that Malcolm X, that Muhammad Ali were all fighting for the same cause, and it's not the idea of what one did for the country. It was the idea of what everybody did for our country. And so I think they would be really angry to learn that we're pulling them out from what they did for the country and just thinking of them as figureheads.
So I have one more question for y'all, and then I'll open up a little bit time to see if anyone in the audience has a question for these youth leaders. But what is your dream for our society, and what steps do you think need to be taken now to make that dream a reality?
My dream for our society personally, especially in Louisville, is just to have real equity. I mean, everybody throws around that term nowadays, even JCPS, which is ridiculous, but I would say, I mean, just have a real equitable society. Completely different than equal society. I mean, if you look at the East End of Louisville, they're about 500 times more well off and have 500 times more of the generational wealth than people in the West End. So if you just make everybody equal, well, all these white people in the East End already are leaps and bounds ahead. So if you say, oh, okay, everybody gets $2,000, well, that doesn't mean as much. That doesn't mean basically anything for the people that already have millions of dollars. So I would say you gotta get everybody to the same point. Like the white people are all the way here, and the Black people are all the way back here. We gotta get everybody up here. So I would say, yeah, just equity in everything, especially in education, because education is where everything starts. I mean, if you don't have the education, you're never gonna know what to fight for or how to fight for it. So I would say just Education is where to start. Education is where to start.
So I'd like to continue to have a society, like, so the world doesn't end. So something that I want to see in the future is definitely more focus on the environment. And I understand why we don't focus on it because it frankly doesn't, it's not a moneymaker at all. You lose money if you try to think about the environment. That's why all of these big corporations and all of these governments just don't care. But all of these predictions of, oh, the world's gonna like implode in on itself in like 50 years is kind of scary, and I don't know why everybody ignores it. So I think we really need to focus more on the environment.
I think that we need to first and foremost start with education, but not just educating the arrogant brats in the East End, but also the people who don't have opportunities in the West End. I think that when people say, oh, we need to put them in more schools, but these kids aren't going to school, they're skipping school. Why do you think it is? Because their parents didn't get the opportunity, so why would they? And I think that if we put more effort into making an actual, like, equal society, then the rewards will start showing.
I can only dream that my future isn't one of fear. And truly, in the past year or two, that's like all I've been seeing in my life. Election day, I came to MACCS the day after the election. We sat in a circle right outside, and there were tears in my eyes. Like, I couldn't imagine a world where I felt actively like I was being hated on. And so it's things like that that just really make me worried for the future. Going on what Raya talked about the environment. This past week, I don't know if it's like been on anybody else's mind, but it is so frightening about how we are walking outside, there's ice and snow on the roads, yet LA is burning up in flames. Like, think about that and let that ruminate, how we are doing nothing to work on that. And we are just talking about, oh, like these celebrities' homes are burning down, like who cares? We are two opposite sides of the country going through entirely different things. That is insane. The hurricanes, the tornadoes, like everything is so frightening. And to live in a world that just kind of says, well, good luck to you and your children. You are living in this world too. And if the world doesn't implode in the next 50 years, I just hope that we are living in one where we are loved and we have love for each other.
And I forgot to add this, but I'd like America to realize that it's not the only place on earth. And people for many, many years have been suffering from this environmental crisis. And it only became an issue when LA caught on fire. But people have been dying because of this huge issues from the landfills in the Philippines, in Singapore as well. But as soon as America becomes affected, then it becomes a problem. But the entire world has been suffering.
Thank you all so much. If anybody in the audience has a question, feel free to raise your hand and we can ask it. Yeah?
This is more directed to the neighbor girls. I'm sure you're aware Manuel has 2 black teachers. And how do you feel about, like, how does it affect not having the strong black teachers whose lives affect the black person?
At Manual, we are very lucky to have teachers that are liberalized in their thoughts and that empower Black voices. For example, my AP US government teacher never pauses to think about what we would be without Black history, and he chooses to use our time in class to uplift Black voices. Same with my AP language teacher, who we took a lot of time to read the letter from Birmingham jail and think about MLK's rhetoric. And I'm fortunate to have a curriculum that, although we don't have Black teachers, that teaches about Black voices. That being said, I am fortunate to have one of the Black teachers at Manual currently in my biomedical interventions class. And she uses her time to talk about disparities in medical history and medical treatments. And I think that these voices need to be heard from more often, because although I am lucky to have liberalized teachers, I don't hear from the people going through these things themselves. And like, I can talk about my AP US history teacher. He taught us about Reconstruction, taught us about the Civil War, but like, I cannot believe a straight white man's word over a Black woman's. And that's just the way the world is. I'm not going to believe someone who hasn't been at the brunt of these problems themselves. So yeah, I just think that we need to get more Black teachers, more voices at Manual.
So my AP World teacher is actually her teacher's wife. So they both try a lot to talk about history, and they try to emphasize that our country would be nothing without the Black community. But like you said, it's something that you can just read, but it's so much different when you hear it from someone whose family, whose people went through it. And I think that it is a good start to educating, but I think Manual would be so much stronger if they had so many more diversity like hires, not even just with the Black community, with all communities, because I'm never gonna learn if I'm just reading about it and hearing what I'm reading about it. I have to genuinely learn about it.
Yes.
My question to you, you guys talked about learning outside of the classroom. So what type of literature are you reading just to help educate yourself about things that are going on? Like, what are you reading? And I'm a librarian, so that's what I'm asking.
Yeah, for me personally, probably my favorite book of all time is Just Mercy by Bryan Stevenson. And we were actually lucky enough to have him at the center a few months ago. Another book that I just picked up, haven't started reading yet, but really looking forward to it, is Ta-Nehisi Coates' The Message, which just came out. I'm really excited to look into that because it's all about how we can kind of dismantle like media bias and kind of get out of that whole framework of the 24-hour news cycle, and how we've basically just been kind of pushed into these very different viewpoints, and the media is actively trying to suppress any new viewpoints or new change. So I would say, again, just coming to events like this, learning from people with different perspectives, even like there's probably 50 people in this room. I hope that after this ends, you at least talk to one of these people that you've never met before, because I guarantee you they have a different viewpoint or they come from a different walk of life. So I would say just constantly trying to get outside of your bubble and trying to be uncomfortable. Like, you have to be okay with being uncomfortable. You have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. So I would say that's the most important thing, is just actively saying, I'm uncomfortable in this situation. Okay, that's good. That means you're growing. That means you're learning. So I would say, yeah, just trying to get out into the world. Like anytime I go out into the world, for example, I try to talk to somebody new. That might be scary for some people, but that's just what I like to do. I like to constantly be learning. So yeah.
So I read Just Mercy and I learned a lot from it, but I didn't enjoy reading it. So after I read it, I started to branch out into more historical fiction because I'm a fiction reader. Sorry, but so the two books that I'm currently reading, Run Me to the Earth, which is talking about the struggle in Laos, which is right next to Vietnam during the Vietnam War. So this is a shadow history. I don't know if you guys know what a shadow history is, but it's a history that's suppressed and everybody kind of forgets about it. But Laos, so America was worried that Vietnam would kind of take Laos as a base. So before Vietnam even entered Laos or anything happened or Laos did anything, they dropped like 1 million bombs and most of them did not detonate. So Laos is basically just like a huge field of undetonated bombs, and if you step on it, you die. So it's like a battleground and they didn't even do anything. So the book follows 3 teenagers during the Vietnam War who live in Laos, and it talks about their struggle watching everybody around them die from bombs when their government and their country was not even involved in the conflict at all. And I just finished a book called They're There, which is another fiction book, but it follows like 20 Native American characters in modern day Oakland. I think there's a lot of stereotypes around Native Americans in this day and age, and the book is more modern, so it talks about really the struggle of the Native Americans in the present day and how they have to, like, all these stereotypes aren't true about them, and it's really, really good. It's by Tommy Orange. I recommend you pick it up.
For me, I'm a very, very big history nerd, and I will flat out open a textbook and just start reading it at any page, because in my opinion, you can't move forward until you learn from your past. But the thing is, you can't just learn about history and think that you're fine now. You have to learn about history and apply it to our current issues. And so I'm also very big on listening to the news on my way to school, or even just seeing stuff on social media. Not everything on social media is fake. Sometimes it's just awareness. And I think that currently I'm rereading All the Light We Cannot See, but I think that reading history books are what make me so present in the current day.
If you have not read books from authors that lived during the Harlem Renaissance, you are not reading correctly. For me, one of my favorite authors was James Baldwin, and just think about who he was as a person. I mean, a homosexual black man living during the Harlem Renaissance. That is revolutionary. He was at the forefront of his ideas, and for me, Giovanni's Room, please go pick up that book. Has me in tears every single time. Some of my other favorites, Their Eyes Were Watching God by Miss Zora Neale Hurston. Her and her contemporaries did amazing work. They are beautiful at telling stories. And truly, if you have no interest in Black history, please just pick up one of these books and that will change your mind.
All right, everybody. We don't have any more time for questions, but I do want to thank you all very much. Again, this is our Muhammad Ali Center Council of Students. Please give them a round of applause. So if you have a young person in your life that you think might be interested, we do open up applications every summer, and the program does run throughout the school year. So if you are interested, be on the lookout over the summer, and feel free to talk to any one of us and we can give you some more information too. Enjoy the rest of your time here at our Community Free Day. Hope to see you again.